Hey folks, and welcome to episode 86 of ShamanTalk. My name's Rhonda and I'm your host. And this week, as requested in our community Facebook group, I'm going to do a podcast about cord cutting. So we're going to go into what cord cutting is, some of the things that you need to think about when you're doing ceremonies like that, and some safe practice. And then I'm going to, in the activity section, I'm going to give you an example cord cutting ceremony that you can do for yourself. All right. So the first thing to say about cord cutting is that it is an excellent ceremony. It can be really useful, and it will have an effect if you do a cord cutting ceremony properly with the right intention, connected in the right way. Then it will have an effect. However, it's rarely as effective as when it's part of a wider strategy of personal growth. So, for example, cord cutting will work really well in conjunction with boundary work or self-resilience building. A cord cutting ceremony undertaken in isolation will rarely have the deep lasting effect that you're looking for. So often we need to carry out a cord cutting ceremony for a person because our boundaries haven't been great and we've ended up with cords attached to us. So it's good to remember that cord cutting, although effective, will be more effective when it's not used in isolation. Cord cutting can be used for people, situations, for places. Can even be used for memories in some cases. And if it's to do with a person, that person may no longer be in your life, or they might still be in your life, but cord cutting can be relevant whether someone's still in your life or not. I'll say this more than once in the podcast, but we never send anything back, positive or negative, when we're doing a cord cutting exercise. We never send anything to people, whether positive or negative. We simply look at our own sphere, our own circle, and we deal with what's there. So that's really important to remember. Is that cord cutting, I've seen some cord cutting ceremonies where you send, on the lighter side, I've seen ceremonies where you send love to the person, or you see that, or you send this or that, and then on the darker side, I've seen all the negative energy you've ever given me, I'm sending it back to you, so we're not sending anything ever when we do this kind of ceremony. I'll explain how you do cord cutting without sending anything back in the example ceremony that I'm going to give as well. So basically, cord cutting is a healing technique that will help you to unhook yourself from draining or unhealthy emotional dynamics and freeing you from relational patterns that basically squander your mental energy, that take your mental energy, that take your spiritual energy, that really drain you of your life force often as well. Cord cutting doesn't seek to remove healthy emotional bonds. We're human beings, we're meant to have emotional bonds with people, with loved ones, but rather it clears away emotional obstructions that are limiting you consciously and unconsciously. Various energy healers can help you with this. Shamanic practitioners in particular, I know, work with cord cutting. And it really allows relationships to grow sometimes into more evolved states. For example, it allows you to free yourself from unhealthy patterns so that you can redefine a relationship, or it might even be that you outgrow that relationship altogether. So if it's to do with a situation, it could be that, there's something to do with your work. You find your work really draining. So it's not a particular person, but it's actually the environment that's created by lots of people that creates a cord that needs cut. So you can do it for situations that will unhook you from the draining dynamics of a toxic workplace. You can also work with people, situations, and gosh, my mind's gone blank. where is it? Lost my notes, guys, sorry. This baby brain that happens every now and again. Person, place, situation or place. So for example, you have an unhealthy memory of a place and time, a home that didn't have pleasant memories, or a piece of land that really affected you badly or something like that. So you can do cord cutting with places as well. So it's not just people, but it's people, situations, places, anything really that causes you energy drain from your body, you can do cord cutting exercises with. So, cord cutting makes it possible for us to detach, freeing up our consciousness and helping us to move towards our growth and our goals. One of the ideas is that this kind of energy work or cord cutting will move you into a higher vibrational state that allows you to kind of transcend your own less evolved ways of being, including unhealthy relationships that keep you kind of anchored in that lower vibration of functioning. And that is true to a certain extent, but again, this is some of the research that I've done, this is what people kind of say about cord cutting, but again, in isolation, cord cutting is not going to move you anywhere, really, and not very far. It will certainly work, like I say, to a certain extent, but unless it's put into practice with other things, it's not likely to have quite the effect that you're looking for. So what is an energy cord? Well, everything is energy, everything carries a unique energy signature that we can form spiritual connections with or cords with. And it kind of helps to think about energy cords as an open energetic channel of emotional communication. So depending on the nature of a relationship with a person, the emotions that you receive from them might impact you positively or negatively. And healthy connections can really build confidence, vitality, love, joy. They don't require work or maintenance, but others can be really restricting. People who perhaps are quite jealous or competitive, and they're sending that frequency of energy to the other person. And we have cords with, or connections, certainly connections with most of the people we come across, if we're not aware of it. You can work energetically with your guardian guide, your body protector guide, to avoid creating cords with people who won't be healthy for you. So really it's important to note that cords will affect you in different ways, to varying degrees, some that persist over time, maybe even lifetimes. It may be that a person in your life wants to control you on a conscious level, and that can be a really strong cord to deal with. Some healers describe cords of attachment as forming whenever there is an unfulfilled desire between you and someone else. So when the relationship between you and the other person is not equal or reciprocal, it becomes an intrusive presence. It creates a lower vibration. It blocks energy in your field. So any relationships formed or perpetuated by fear, power, anxiety, or a need to control or suppress can all benefit from cord cutting. So what do they look like? Well, that's quite the question. Cords are seen psychically by some in the mind's eye, and how they intuitively appear to you may be symbolic. It might be that it shows you some of the kind of subtleties of the relationship's emotional effects, like a thick black rope or a metal chain, or something like barbed wire even. Cords often come to me in quite a simple form when I'm working with clients with cord cutting. They often just look like a bit like umbilical cords, actually, is what they look like to me. And you can see the energy kind of surging through backwards and forwards. I often will see colours in the cords, which will give me an indication of the type of cord that I'm dealing with, the type of issue that I'm dealing with. Sometimes cords will be linked to your chakras and energy centres. If you work with chakras, it's not something that I do work with chakras to a certain extent, but not massively. But that's very, if you feel something attached to your throat chakra, it can be that someone's suppressing your ability to be yourself or suppressing your ability to communicate. Or it could be that you're connected to somebody through a healthy, loving connection in your heart chakra, for example, which is absolutely fine. I've seen with working with clients, I've seen people have more than one cord attached to a person, almost like they were a puppet. So, kind of attached to different parts of their body, which was quite an interesting one. So there's lots of different things that you can be shown when you're shown a cord. Just be really open to what that looks like. Excuse me. And then obviously when you're then going to be removing cords, you're going to be cutting them as well, which we'll get to in a minute, what that looks like. So it's definitely possible to cut cords on your own, for sure. But there are times when you'll need support to do that. There are times when you'll need a skilled practitioner. Depends on the nature of the cord. But you can try it for yourself, and if it doesn't work, it's not going to make it worse, put it that way. As long as you follow the safe guiding principles of shamanic practice, and perhaps if you're new to this kind of work, you can follow the steps that I give you in the next section. But sometimes just be aware that you might need some help with it. Sometimes the low vibrational nature of a cord, or the depth to which it buries into your psyche and body and mind and soul, can make it very difficult for you to do yourself, because you can't always see, feel or know where the cord is, or really what effect it's having on your body. So it could also be that you need to do it a few times, the ceremony, more than once, in order to get to the heart of the matter. It might not just be a case of doing it once and then everything's fine. So a popular method of cord cutting is visualization. So where you visualise the cords, what they look like, and then you cut them with something. Some healers will guide you through the process, and the shamanic practitioners certainly will have their guides with them to support any work being done. And again, I'm going to go into detail. I'm going to give you an example of a cord cutting exercise, a cord cutting ceremony that you can do in the next section. So what's the point then of all of this cord cutting business? Well, some of the things that you might experience after a successful cord cutting ceremony will be you'll expect a readjustment of the relationship, for sure. If you're still in relationship with that person, you may find that your memory of that person or relationship starts to dim. So it's not quite as, if they're not around in your life anymore, it may be that the memory of them just simply gets quieter, isn't quite as strong in your mind. You could expect an outburst of anger or sadness, or depending on the type of person you're cutting cords from, it could be that if the person has a tendency to be a victim, that their victim comes out because they can feel you pulling away, they start to panic and they turn on all the victim emotional blackmail type stuff. That could happen. If the person has a tendency to be a little narcissistic, then it could be that there's tears and crying and that kind of thing. So just, once you disengage, you can expect potentially some backlash from the person that you're disconnecting from. If it's a situation or place, again, the memory, the problem, the issue that you're having will tend to fade. Your energy levels will increase. You'll feel lighter and brighter. Usually you'll feel much more able to get on with the things that you want to be getting on with. that kind of thing. Some people notice a real feeling of lightness inside and outside. Some people will just cry as part of the cord cutting exercise. It's such a release. Some people might even feel grief, because sometimes when we cut cords, we've relied on the energy ourselves as well. We've got to be honest about that. Sometimes we've been unhealthily attached to that cord, so that might happen. You might feel tired, nauseous, lightheaded. You can have quite a physical reaction, really, sometimes. If any of that happens, the less positive stuff, then just look after yourself. Have a bath, get in the water, ask the water for a wee cleanse, or, speak to your guides and ask what would be best to get you back to feeling to rights again, essentially. So I think that trust your inner knowing, ask your guides what you feel would be right for you after you've experienced a cord cutting ceremony if you're not feeling quite yourself. So again, a cord cutting exercise is about you. It's about your relationships and not about the person. So if we're talking about people, we're not sending anything back. We're not affecting that person in any way. All you're doing is fully focusing on yourself in your own circle, doing your own work. And that's really important to remember. Great. So next I'm going to give you an example, a step-by-step example of a cord cutting exercise or ceremony, a cord cutting ceremony that you can do at home. So if you want to grab a pen and paper, as always, this information will be on the show notes, so you can get it there as well, centreforshamanism.com/86. But if you like to write things down, then you can go ahead and grab a pen and paper, and I'll see you in just a sec. Alright, welcome back to part 2. So I'm going to talk you through a cord cutting ceremony. This is the ceremony that I tend to use for myself if I'm doing any cord cutting work for myself. And it's a combination of journey work and physical movement. Alright, so first thing you're going to do is journey with your guides and ask if there is an appropriate ceremony for the issue, if this is an appropriate ceremony for the issue you're having, alright? So cord cutting isn't always going to be the appropriate ceremony for your issue, so you need to check with your guides that this is appropriate and that you're not just grabbing onto the first thing that you see thinking that that'll work. So your guides might give you a different, more appropriate ceremony for the issue that you're having, so just be open to that. So that's the first thing you're going to do. You're going to ask if this is an appropriate ceremony for the issue that you're having. Okay, so assuming the answer is yes, you're going to open your sacred space and spend some time in silent contemplation, scanning your inner landscape. So, can you feel the location of the cords that you wish to sever? Do you get a sense of what that looks like for you? You can also call your guides in and ask for help with this. You're just sitting quietly in your space, feeling energetically where any cords might be attached to your body. You might feel more than one as well, which is absolutely fine. When you can feel the cords, what I'd like you to do is draw a circle on the ground around yourself. So this can, you can stand, you can sit on a chair, whatever you're comfortable with. This can be an imaginary line on the floor. I usually use an imaginary line. I've also used salt or crystals or wool or chalk or red ochre or something like that. So anything that you feel drawn to using. But an imaginary line is just as effective as a physical line. It's the intention that counts. So you're drawing a circle, and this represents your field. This represents your space. All right? So next, you'll feel the cord. You're standing in the circle. You'll feel the cord, and you're going to cut it with something. And you can do this one at a time if you've been given more than one, or you can do it. You can have a handful of them, whatever. Honestly, it's like just go with the flow with this, like go with your intuition. So you'll cut the cord using whatever comes to mind. So what flies into your mind? Is it a sword, golden scissors, a small blade, a flamethrower? Perhaps an animal will gnaw through the cord for you, or a guide might sever the cord. Be open and allow the flow of whatever happens there. It may be that the guides give you your cord cutting weapon / implement in your first journey as well. That could also happen. So next, when that cord is severed, you take the end that's attached to you and place it in the ground inside your circle. And you're going to physically do that. You're going to bend down and put that cord in the ground. And you're going to state this, you're going to make this statement. This cord is no longer attached to anything but the heartbeat of Mother Earth and will heal closed over the coming days. And then you're going to take the cord attached to the person, place or situation, and you're going to place that in the ground outside the circle you're standing in. And you're going to state, this cord is no longer attached to me. I place this cord to Mother Earth with love. I do not send anything back, nor do I hold any intentions towards the person, place, situation. This cord no longer affects me. Okay? And then finally, you're going to thank your guides. You're going to step out of the circle and then remove the circle. Alright? So imaginary circles can be like brushed away with your hand and maybe sand, you could sand the space. And obviously physical circles can be physically removed. If it's a salt or dirt circle you've made, you can sweep that up, or you can hoover it up or something, and then you can sand the area, or the crystal or the wool or whatever it is that you're removing. You can sand that, make that sacred, and then you close your space. And that's it. So it's fairly straightforward. Some people get really tied up in ceremony and making sure they're doing it right, and what if they miss a step or they're not doing it properly. As long as you've got your guides with you, and you're putting one cord in half, the cord that's attached to you inside the circle and the cord that isn't attached to you outside the circle, and you're not sending anything, you'll be fine. Yeah, so try not to get too wrapped up or worried about doing it wrong. Yeah, so that is your cord cutting ceremony that you can try at home. I would love to hear how you get on with that in the Facebook group. As always, we put the podcast post up, so do go ahead and let me know how you get on. I cannot for the life of me remember who suggested that we did the cord cutting podcast, but thank you for the suggestion. If you have any other suggestions for the podcast that you'd like to see, you can always put those in the group as well. I'm always up for suggestions. I think this was quite a good one because it's a fairly well-known process. It's not too difficult to do at home and doesn't require a massive amount of experience, actually. The only thing that I would like to ask you to remember is that if it doesn't work, or you're really feeling like you need some help with it, that's totally normal. Like a lot of cord cutting exercises, a lot of the time when people want to do a cord cutting exercise, it's because the situation has been very fraught and very difficult. So one of the things that you think about doing is practicing first with something that's a little bit less fraught for you. You know, if it's something that's quite difficult for you to do or think about. So you could start with like something else that probably could do with a cord cutting but isn't quite as emotionally unsafe. So you can work up to the big one. If you've got one cord cutting exercise that you know you need to do, but it's like really quite a big deal, then you can work up to that by doing it with easier and kind of smaller issues that you've been having. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed the podcast this week. Excuse my froggy throat. It seems that pregnancy makes me very coughy, but only when I talk either on my lives or on my podcasts, not in normal life, which is really interesting. I'll need to do a wee journey with my guides and find out why that's happening. But anyway, regardless, hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. I can't wait to hear how you get on with your ceremony in the group, and I'll see you all same time, same place next week. Hey, thank you so much for listening. We love it. We love you. We love connecting with you on our podcast. We're really pushing our Facebook community right now. It is where all the Just Say Shamanic stuff happens. So if you'd like to join us in that community, you'll find us on Facebook and look for the Centre for Shamanism community group. And we'll see you there.